Greetings guys, gals, and non-binary pals. Welcome back to The Amazing Plant Project. My name's Kate, and today we're doing something a little different. May the 4th be with you.
And also with you.
On this, the 4th of May, we pay homage to the late Peter Mayhew and everyone's favorite Wookiee, Chewbacca, with a journey to Chewie's homeworld of Kashyyyuk. Fair warning, a lot of this is from Wikipedia because they're awesome and have aggregated most of the information. First, a little backstory on the ecology and the planet, and then more on the particular plants that we're talking about. I will say this is a shortened version of the blog post that I wrote for today. The link's in the description. It has a little bit more of the political and cultural side of the whole situation. So Kashyyyuk was a mid-rim planet in the Matiranor sector of the Kashyyyuk system. It had one sun, 3 moons, one of which was orange, and it had an orbital period of 381 days, just slightly longer than our 365. The Randon Rim was a hyperspace trade route that went through that system, and because of that and how the planet was situated with the others in that system, it was a highly strategic outpost. On the standard galactic grid that the planets were designated on, if you will, it was given the coding P-9, and at its height had a population of 56 million. Now, as to the botanical life, right? It was a lush, vibrant, largely peaceful planet. The Wookiees and other life forms that live there mostly coexisted. I mean, there's every once in a while there is fighting and war that breaks out, but it's not mass genocide most of the time, you know, as a lot of places have seen. It was a lush, vibrant planet with dense forest and kind of jungle cover, with a rather temperate climate. The most notable of the native flora was the Wroshyr trees, but these trees were very long-lived, and at least some species could get to be 50,000 years old, much like the extended age of their Wookiee counterparts at 400. Now, according to Wikipedia, there's about 1,000 distinct species according to the lore, some of which, like the ones that live in the denser deep forest, can get to be several kilometers tall, but most are only about 300 to 400 meters tall, which is still a lot, but not multiple kilometers. And these giant trees served as the basis for the Wookiees' advanced tree houses that they built. Not primitive in any capacity. There was a highly developed network going between the trees and working with the tree's ecology to have everyone benefit, as it were. The tree was the basis for the city planning, essentially. So they had to maintain the trees. They had to keep the trees happy and thriving, or everything fell apart. You know, you have to kind of maintain the foundation, and that was their foundation, basically. And these Wroshyr trees were so highly prevalent and adaptive that they existed in every ecosystem on planet aside from the poles. Those didn't have any, but which makes sense if there's if there's 1,000 or more of them. It's very diverse. Now, when the Imperial forces, or the Empire, however you would like to call it, Palpatine's band of jerks, also works, in my opinion. But under that, when they landed and started enslaving the native Wookiee population, the Imperial Guard forced the Wookiees, who had a strong tie to the trees because that was literally the foundation of their society, to cut the trees down to be timber for the Imperial Army, and to clear the land in order to be able to farm produce for the army, basically. So, once again, imperialism at its finest. And all of this on top of having Empire involvement on the planet was in direct conflict, as you might expect, with everything the inhabitants of said planet stood for, being that they were staunch supporters of both the Republic and the Resistance, to the point that even with the heavy Imperial influence and the Imperial hand trying to control everything on planet, it was still known as a safe space, a safe planet for the Resistance. So in the course of the Empire's involvement in Kashyyyuk, there were a number of rebellions and riots and escape attempts, being that the Wookiees were being held captive in slavery. Nobody wants that. During the Lassan invasion, weapons were fashioned out of the wood of the Wroshyr trees, and attempts were made to free the Wookiees who were enslaved at the time in that location. Now, most didn't make it out, some did, but from how it's described as outsiders who are trying to take over the space, both in the Star Wars universe and in history, there's been a few instances of that happening, as you might remember from your history class. But when it's something from the native traditions or the local flora or fauna, and it's fashioned into a weapon, a lot of the time it's seen as the spirits of that place, or the ancestors of that place, or that people are lending strength to the current generation to fend off or support or defend, whatever terminology you want to go with, anyone in that society who is oppressed or otherwise not treated as they should be. So in the wood from the trees that are the foundation of culture and architecture and life for the Wookiee species. Using that wood as a defense, it could be argued that it's the entire background of that people sending a defense to those in need. It's just an interesting take on it. Because ethnobotany is part of cultural anthropology and science. All science. Also, from the imagery that I've seen and the depictions and everything, the Wroshyr trees themselves seem to be some combination of a few different tropical Asian species and possibly something like the Californian redwoods or sequoias, which is an interesting combination, but it seems to be working, so we'll go with that. So also notable for flora is the Kashyyyuk orchid fern. I haven't been able to find much on the orchid fern, aside from the fact that it grew like a tree, but that would be an interesting one to look at some more of. But I just found a little blurb, so figured I'd mention it as well. So now we've reached the end of our jaunt to Kashyyyuk. Leave a comment in the comment section down below if there's any other fictional worlds that you'd like me to venture into, or other aspects of the Star Wars universe, for that matter. It's all kind of fun, so let me know, and I'll give it a go. Alright, so that's the end of today's little journey into a fictional universe. I'll leave you with this. Like with many, especially popular fictional universes and storylines, there's a lot in the Star Wars universe that it also occurs or has occurred in our current reality, as it were, either past or present. Now, with the deforestation, between that and the slavery and the colonizing forces making the local inhabitants do X, Y, and Z against their own environment, it brings to mind so many instances with the Native Americans and the Aboriginal people of Australia, and basically anywhere that there's a native population, and generally Europeans, but anyone who's coming in to colonize the region and take it for themselves or their lord or whoever is funding the expedition. That's a common theme that you see throughout history. So last week I asked you to think of one thing, or more, but one thing in your immediate environment that you thought was completely awesome, and document it and share it with somebody else and find out what they think is completely awesome in your surrounding environment, and have other people do that so that everyone in your community, ideally the world, really, it's all one giant community if you think about it, would be more inclined to seeing even the small minutiae of beauty in their environment. There's not always something that you can do about the big things, especially if you don't feel like you have the power to change anything. But if you start with your small community, even if it's just you and a camera, or your immediate, like, 2 or 3 friends, it makes a difference. So that was last week. This week, I want you to take a look at your favorite fictional reality. I want you to take a look at that and see if you can determine particular ecosystems in there, or if there's a particular plant or animal that the native population or the depicted native population finds particularly significant. That encompasses any literature, film, anime, literally anything. Video games. That would be an interesting one. I don't really know all that much about the video games, but I've seen some interesting things. So, and if there's a known, like, environmental, ecological shift situation happening in there. I know there's some, especially with the, like, zombie, post-apocalyptic sort of genre, there's a lot that have to do with ecology and potential climate change and things like that. So I'd be interested to see what you guys have to say about that. Have a good week. See you next time. And, oh, yeah. All my links and stuff for social media stuff is in the description down below. Got the Twitter and the Instagram and the Facebook and the YouTube-ness. Last video is up here. Some YouTube things you might like is over here. And the link to my other channel where I do experiments and fun randomness and food things and stuff is going to be, yeah, up here. Yeah. So, yeah. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't already, and the bell icon next to it to be notified when I upload something. And have a great week, guys. See you later.